What's up, guys? It's Ben with 2020 election predictions, and today I'm going to look at the five most probable electoral college outcomes, in my opinion. So, in each of these things, I have five different electoral outcomes, and if you just saw the transition, there's a lot of different shades of red and blue. Um, because in my last video, I said that the 2020 presidential election would not be that hard to predict. And I want to explain that a little bit. I mean, obviously, no one's going to know the exact numbers in each state, but I really only think that about four or five states are going to be able to flip. And in these five projections, I think I really only flip four or five states. In each scenario, depends on how much turnout there is, maybe how well Joe Biden and Donald Trump do with certain demographic groups, or just maybe just simply like how many people end up just turning out on election day, or also considering maybe there's some seismic shifts, like for example with these George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matter movement. I think that is going to shift the race a little bit, and we've seen that already in the polls. So anyway, this is my number one most likely outcome, and I'm just going to stand by what I said on June 1st. In my last video, I said if the election were held today, that Joe Biden would win, but I still think this is a very feasible outcome. So just some important things to know. I don't want to spend too much time on each electoral map. I have Wisconsin, Arizona, and Florida all tilting towards the Republicans. The state that I'm most unsure about in this projection was the state of Arizona. I think in three out of the five of these, I actually have Arizona tilting towards the blue. It's just so hard to know because Arizona's demographics are changing so fast. So it's really hard to predict a state like Arizona. It's unclear like how many registered voters there are necessarily, just because they're being registered so fast, and how many of these registered voters will turn out on election day. So I think that's the biggest variable, but the most likely outcome in my book is the closest. Donald Trump only wins by 2 electoral votes. And so we'll definitely have to look at if are there any faithless electors. I really don't think that faithless electors should be allowed. I think there's a Supreme Court case that's going to be deciding it, because I think it's a little anti-democratic. I mean, you could argue the Electoral College is anti-democratic, but I think that having faithless electors just puts in a whole dynamic that's not necessarily fair. So next up, everything's pretty much the same except I have Arizona tilting towards the Democrats. I mean, honestly, I can say with like a fair amount of certainty that like I think North Carolina is going to go to the Republicans no matter what happens. Like even if the election were held today, I think North Carolina would be. And this is one of the states that states that's like considered one of the six swing states when I looked at the 270 to win. And same with Michigan. So I think Michigan's going to go to Joe Biden no matter what, and I think North Carolina is going to go to Donald Trump no matter what. So that really leaves like four or five states: Florida, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, and maybe even throw in Minnesota too. So only four states are going to matter. So if only four states truly matter, then that means that there's only 16 possible outcomes for the Electoral College. So next up, this is another case that Donald Trump wins. This implies that Donald Trump kind of keeps his hold on the Rust Belt and even flips Minnesota. So how this scenario differs from 2016 is that he would lose Arizona, which I think is a very likely outcome, but he still kind of holds his base on the Electoral College, on the Rust Belt. And there have been some polls earlier that have indicated that he hasn't lost a lot of support in the Rust Belt. And the only reason I have Michigan flipping the other way is just because I think Michigan is the most Democratic heavy Rust Belt state, and it has the highest African American population. And I especially think with the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd protests that the African American vote is going to be energized. And I think Donald Trump might be able to make some small gains in that, but still, any increase in the African American turnout is going to hurt Donald Trump. That's just kind of simply a fact. So right now I have two outcomes where Donald Trump wins, one where Joe Biden wins. Next up, this is actually in my last video what I had if the election were held today. If Joe Biden just keeps going on smoothly and Donald Trump doesn't really pick up in the polls at all, I think this is what the election is going to look like. I think he would barely hang on in North Carolina and Georgia, but I think that like states like Florida and Wisconsin, which I think Donald Trump can win and maybe even holds a slight advantage right now, would go towards Joe Biden, and then states like Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Minnesota would be lean Democratic states. States that Joe Biden would win by more than 2 points, and you even see states like Montana, Utah, and Alaska, and South Carolina that would only be likely states, and states like Ohio, Iowa, and Texas are lean states when typically have had them as like likely states. But then lastly, this is more of a close one. So this is my fifth most likely outcome. And before I had 2-2, but this is a third win for Joe Biden. But it's still very close. This kind of assumes that Donald Trump's going to hold on to Arizona, and this is kind of the thinking that everyone predicts Arizona and Texas are going to go to the Democrats, but the Republicans end up holding on to them in presidential years. But this just assumes that that Joe Biden wins back the Rust Belt, and I've talked about Wisconsin being the most Republican favored one, and in my first election, everything is literally the same, except that Joe Biden would win Wisconsin. So there you have it, and like as you can see in a lot of these outcomes, so like going from here to here, only one state changes, and you go here to here, only one state changes, and like here to here, I mean, you have more states change, and then from here to here, you have like 3 states change. So really, I don't think there's going to be a lot of outcomes, and I actually think right now, with over 50% certainty, that one of these 5 outcomes will be the outcome on election day, and I cannot wait until November 4th when I can look back to my video in June and be like, look, out of 5 outcomes, I correctly predicted it. So let me know if you agree with one of my 5 predictions or if you disagree in the comments below. And please make your own videos if you want to make your own YouTube channel, and I'll check them out and kind of compare them too. So please do that. I'm really open for that. And I'm also open up to any collaborations if any of y'all are interested in doing that. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow with a new video.